He was in West Africa for a film. A script in hand, a crew waiting. But that day, what stopped Morgan Freeman wasn't a camera, it was a name whispered over lunch. Traoré. He asked once, then twice. Who? Silence filled the table. A producer leaned in, voice hushed. You don't know? He's the man who brought power down without raising his voice. Back at the hotel, Freeman searched the name. Headlines piled up. Betrayal exposed. A pen, not a gun. The silent president. He stared at the screen, brow furrowed. This man isn't fiction, he muttered. He's the kind of story we miss. Until it's too late. He leaned back. For the first time in years, the script in his hand felt less urgent than the one unfolding in real life. He reached out to a local fixer. That evening, they met at a dim cafe. Traoré doesn't command, said the man. He listens. And somehow, that scares them more. Freeman took notes like he was preparing for a role. Where is he now? The fixer smiled. Everywhere, not because he shows up, but because no one forgets when he does. The next day, Freeman paused filming. I need a few hours, he told the director. No one questioned him. A car rolled out of the city and into the hills. Dust trailed behind. In the back seat, he looked out the window and whispered, This is where silence grows. And where leadership doesn't ask to be noticed, it earns it. His first stop, a rural school. No roof, no flags. But voices strong, united. A boy read aloud. He didn't raise his voice. He raised us, Freeman blinked. Who wrote that? The teacher smiled. His brother heard it on the radio. We kept it. If stories like this deserve to be heard, subscribing helps more than you think. He walked through the Kaya market. A woman pointed at a crumbling wall. On it, hand-painted words. Traoré sees us. No campaign, no brand, just belief. He touched the paint. They don't follow him like a president, he said. They'd protect him like a memory. A vendor nearby simply nodded. We've had leaders. We've never had someone ours. Behind a bakery, a war veteran told him. He came alone. No guards, no aides, just eyes clear and quiet. Freeman asked, What did he say? Nothing. Just sat beside us, helped patch a wound, left a cloth on the table. That's not strategy, Freeman said. No, the man smiled. That's respect. By day 4, the set had stopped calling. His phone lay silent beneath a worn notebook, now full of names, phrases, drawings. At a roadside stall, he whispered into his recorder, I came to perform. But now I feel performed upon. Like someone handed me a story I didn't know I needed to carry. In a small village, an elder woman told him, he came here once, sat beside my son in the clinic. No cameras, no promises. Just presence. Freeman asked what he said. Nothing, she smiled. And that's why it meant everything. Then she added, You've seen our land. What do you hear now? He had no answer. Just awe. That night, back in his room, Freeman wrote, Dear Mr. President, your silence is louder than speeches. Your presence heavier than applause. I don't know if this letter finds you, but I hope this voice might. If this story reached you too, leave a like. It helps it reach someone else. The next morning, Freeman wandered into a radio station. In the hallway, a janitor softly sang a verse. He said nothing. But we heard change. Freeman paused. Where's that from? The man shrugged. Someone wrote it after the mining deal. We all say it now. Words becoming wind. Wind becoming legacy. A journalist met him for tea. She showed him a notebook. Inside, handwritten testimonies from villages, every place Traoré had visited, unannounced, unscripted. No speeches? Freeman asked. Just presence, she said. If this touched you, leave a like. Someone else might need to feel this too. He visited a youth center. The kids were debating quietly, passionately. "Why do you think he doesn't shout?" a girl asked. A boy replied, "Because he knows we'll hear him anyway." Freeman turned to the facilitator. "Is this scripted?" The man laughed. "Only by reality." Outside, two teenage boys played a song on a wooden flute and a tin drum. The melody carried a weight Freeman couldn't name. "What is that?" "One of them wrote it," the teacher said. "It's called No Guards, No Guns." He closed his eyes. "It sounds like a revolution that already happened." That night, he recorded another voice memo. "I came for a film, but I found something better unwritten history. Maybe forgotten elsewhere, but here, it breathes." If stories like these matter to you, subscribing isn't just support, it's keeping them alive. A small gathering, candles, no stage, just people. One spoke of the night Traoré refused foreign bribes on camera. He didn't just say no, he smiled while doing it. Another whispered, "He made us feel like we were worth protecting." Freeman's eyes welled, though no tears fell. He visited a small farm where the walls were etched with charcoal lines that formed dates. "What is this?" he asked. "The nights Traoré visited," the farmer said. "Why mark them?" "Because no one ever came here before. And because no one believed us when we said he did." He walked through a border village barely on the map. A woman recognized him and smiled. "You're the man listening to us." He nodded, unsure what to say. "You came all this way for our story?" "No," he answered. "Then why?" "Because your story came all the way to me." In a chapel, a pastor quoted Traoré in his sermon, not from scripture, but from memory. He said, "Justice does not scream. It proves." Freeman wrote it down, slowly, twice, then underlined it. He had found a president. But also something harder to find, a message that didn't need permission to resonate. He returned to the Capitol with mud on his shoes and no camera crew. In the hotel mirror, he stared at his own reflection. "Why did I come here?" he asked himself. His voice hoarse answered, "To carry something home not for Hollywood, but for people who still think Africa is a footnote." He turned off the light. The notebook stayed open. In a dim cafe in the city, a poet performed verses inspired by the mining scandal. He didn't walk out. He stayed. He didn't speak loud. We stayed quiet to hear him. Freeman didn't clap. He just closed his eyes. It wasn't applause he felt. It was alignment. A young woman approached. "You've met us now." Heard what he means. If you could ask him one thing, what would it be? Freeman smiled, then paused. "And now we ask you. If you could ask Traoré one question, what would it be? Leave it in the comments, we read them all." Later, Freeman sat on a rooftop as the call to prayer echoed softly across the city. He whispered into his recorder, "I've walked among those who fear nothing but being unheard. And I've heard them. Now the question is, what do I do with that?" He visited a university where students debated geopolitics. One stood up and said, "They call him a threat." "Why?" the professor asked. "Because he's honest." Freeman wrote it down. Not because it was new, but because no one dared to say it on camera. He wandered into a barber shop. On the wall, a drawing of Traoré made in pencil. Who drew this? A kid. "Sold it for a haircut." Freeman stared. "It's not perfect." "No," the barber smiled. "But it's real. That's why we kept it." That night, Freeman walked alone near the presidential palace. Not to be seen, just to see. A guard nodded from afar. No tension, just presence. He recorded. They don't fear him. They feel him. And that's not power. That's something older. Inside a bookstore, an old woman gave him a dusty copy of her journal. "I wrote about the night he saved the marketplace." Freeman flipped through handwritten pages. "Did anyone publish this?" "No." "Then why write it?" because I needed to remember, even if the world forgot. The more he listened, the more he felt inadequate to narrate. He whispered into his phone, "This isn't mine to tell, but maybe it's mine to carry." And as he said it, the idea took root. What if the voice he had wasn't meant to speak, but to echo? He returned to the same school from day one. The boy who once read the line now handed him a letter. For him, for you. Freeman opened it. "If you tell our story, tell it softly." That's how we speak here. His hands trembled slightly. He wasn't the teacher anymore. He was the messenger. He sat under a tree, just listening to chickens, to wind, to silence. He smiled. If you're still here, maybe the silence spoke to you too. Leave a like if this story quietly moved you forward. At a print shop, a poster caught his eye. It wasn't of Traoré, but of a quote. They listened because he didn't beg to be heard. Freeman touched the ink. How did this get made? The shopkeeper shrugged. A kid dropped it off. Said to print 100. Paid in coins. Freeman visited a prison. One inmate requested to speak. "We betrayed the nation," he said. He didn't yell. He reformed us. Freeman asked, "What changed you?" The man replied, "He treated me like I still mattered." Freeman couldn't write fast enough. He stood near the ruins of a village abandoned after conflict. On a burned wall, written in soot, he visited. We stayed. No signature, no timestamp, but it felt like scripture. He took a photo. To remember silence written in ash. A filmmaker showed Freeman raw footage from the coup day. No guns, just stairs, and one voice. "We take back what was always ours." Freeman said nothing. He rewatched the clip, then again, and again. Each time, it said more. He met a group of musicians. They asked him to read from his notebook while they played. A flute joined, then a drum. He read. "I've seen leaders, but here, I met something older than leadership." The room fell into music. Like history was humming. The performance ended. One musician asked him, "Do people back home know what you saw?" Freeman replied, "Not yet. But if you believe they should, leave a like. Maybe it helps the next voice rise." At a refugee camp, a boy sketched Freeman's face. "It's not me you should draw," he said. The boy shrugged. "I drew you because you're the first person who asked why we love him." Freeman didn't know what to say, so he smiled and stayed a while longer. In a quiet church, the choir sang a new hymn. No one had written it. It had grown, word by word, verse by verse, from village to city. Freeman wrote the chorus down, not as a souvenir, but as a vow. That night, Freeman lit a candle in his room. He wasn't praying, he was preparing to speak, to carry, to echo. Because some voices don't disappear. They wait for the right one to carry them forward. A producer called. "You coming back next week?" Freeman replied, "Not yet." He paused. "There's something I need to do first. Not with a script, not with a stage. Just with a voice." Then he opened his journal and wrote one word at the top. Traoré. He stood in front of a microphone, not for a film, but a recording booth. The engineer adjusted levels. No script? Just the truth, Freeman said. He closed his eyes, breathed once, and spoke. This isn't fiction. It's the sound of someone who made silence mean something. His voice wove through images, markets, faces, words painted on walls. Then he paused the session. If someone like Traoré lived near you, would people protect him or push him away? Now we ask you, if this kind of leader rose where you live, what would people do? Tell us in the comments. He walked alone at dawn along a dry riverbank. A group of kids waved from afar. One shouted, "Say hi to the others." Freeman smiled. "What others?" "The people you'll tell," the boy grinned. Freeman placed a hand on his heart. "I will." An artist gave him a charcoal drawing Traoré with his people, faceless but standing close. Why no faces? The artist replied, because when you speak about him, people should see themselves. Freeman said nothing. He simply held the image like it was made of glass. The final day arrived. His bag was packed, the pages full. The voice recorded, but still he hesitated. Then the hotel clerk handed him a folded note, just 4 words. Thank you for listening. He didn't ask who wrote it. He already knew. On the plane, he played the recording back. His voice calm and certain. He never asked to be remembered. And yet, here we are trying to remember right. The clouds drifted past. But the story stayed grounded, right where it belonged. He landed. The crew waited. The studio was ready, but he paused at the gate. One producer asked, "Ready to be Morgan again?" He smiled gently. I think I just met the better version of him. He returned home, alone. In his study, he placed the journal on a shelf, next to scripts, awards, and dusty projects. But this one felt alive. He whispered, I didn't act this story. I followed it. He wrote a final entry. To anyone who hears this, thank you. If these stories move you, share them, not for numbers, not for fame, but for the silence they carry and the courage they remind us to find. And if you're still here, thank you for walking with us. Then he closed the notebook, not as an ending, but as a beginning. Outside, the sun was rising, and somewhere far away, a voice like his, quiet, calm, and courageous, was beginning to be heard. The voice memo aired quietly, no trailer, no announcement. Just a title, The Man Who Led Without Shouting. Within hours, comments flooded in. Who is he? Why haven't we heard of this before? And then, thank you. A whisper sent into the world had begun to echo. An old man in Detroit turned up the volume. A student in Rio played it for her class. A cafe in Paris lit candles as it looped in the background. And in a village near Kaya, a boy who once read aloud on cracked stone. He heard Freeman's voice say his brother's line. You didn't raise your voice, you raised us. The boy stood still. His hand shook slightly. Then he smiled, because someone far away, who had never met them, listened. In Los Angeles, a talk show host played a clip. Who knew Morgan Freeman would narrate a West African president like it was scripture? The audience laughed, then clapped. And the clip played again. This time no one laughed. They just listened. The voice crossed borders without documents. It carried no flag, but it knew where to go. To quiet people in loud places. To tired hearts in hopeful silence. It was not Morgan's voice that moved them. It was the man he chose to echo. Back in his home, Freeman received a package. No return address. Inside, a handwritten note. Thank you for helping the world hear him. And beneath it, a pen, simple, black, unblinking. Freeman placed it on his desk beside the journal. Nothing more needed to be said. He later walked through Harlem unnoticed. A mural had begun to take shape. No signature, just one face, painted in gold and deep brown. The caption read, He didn't need volume. He had truth. A young filmmaker messaged him, I heard your voice, but saw my grandfather. A poet replied, I thought I was writing alone. Turns out I wasn't. A child drew a line across a map. From here to there, someone finally cared. Freeman stood once more in the recording booth. He spoke one line, not part of any project, not for a studio, just for himself. I was only supposed to act, but then I listened, and I carried what I heard. The session ended, he stepped out. No applause, no lights, just a still room, and a silence he no longer feared, because sometimes the quietest stories go the furthest.